You think you're better than us?
That's right. Keep on laughing.
Maya Thompson, once erased from history, walks into a military shooting range only to be mocked by General Kane and his men for her race and gender, unaware that she was once the legendary Phantom Sniper. As Kane's cruelty and arrogance fuel the tension, Maya's flawless shots and unshaken spirit begin unraveling his lies, forcing long-buried memories of betrayal and sacrifice to resurface. Through powerful confrontations, flashbacks of missions where she saved lives but was scapegoated, and a growing chorus of soldiers who now see the truth, Kane's carefully built empire of fear begins to collapse. An inquiry exposes his falsified reports and stolen glory, while Maya's voice, once silenced, reclaims her honor and restores the dignity of those who fell under his negligence. In a final act of poetic justice, Kane is stripped of his rank and humiliated, while Maya, no longer a ghost of war but a legend reborn, stands unbroken, chains shattered, truth victorious. The fluorescent lights of the indoor shooting range hummed above, a sterile buzz cutting through the muffled thuds of gunfire. Maya Thompson signed her name on the roster with neat, practiced strokes. Her handwriting was steady, soldier steady. She felt the eyes before she even looked up. A cluster of men by the vending machine paused mid-conversation. Boots scuffed. A low chuckle spread, sharp enough to slice the air. "Now this is something you don't see every day," one of them muttered. Maya ignored it, her face unreadable. She adjusted the strap of her range bag and walked toward lane 12. Every step was deliberate, unhurried. At the far end of the room, General Richard Kane stood like a centerpiece of power. Tall, broad-shouldered, chest puffed with medals even off-duty, he radiated entitlement. His laugh boomed when he noticed her. "Well, hell," Kane said, loud enough for the entire room. "Didn't know they started letting tourists in here." The men around him snickered. Maya laid her bag on the bench, unzipped it. The scent of oiled steel drifted up. "Careful now," Kane continued, voice dripping mockery. "That thing might be a little heavy for those hands. You sure you're in the right place, sweetheart?" Her silence unnerved some of them, though none admitted it. "Come on, General," one of the younger officers said lightly. "She's just here to practice like everyone else." "Practice?" Kane scoffed. "Son, I've seen recruits with more business holding a rifle. Look at her. Probably never fired outside some YouTube tutorial." Laughter rippled again. Maya lifted the rifle from her case. She didn't rush. Her fingers traced the barrel with intimate familiarity. But she gave nothing away. The narration in her mind, no. The narrator hovering above spoke like a cold witness. A woman of war standing in a room of men who never bled the way she did. Their arrogance fed by a system that always believed silence meant weakness. Kane wasn't done. "Tell you what, ma'am. Don't hurt yourself out here. Trigger might bite back. Ain't like the movies," he winked. His men laughed louder. Maya finally glanced up. Her gaze was steady, dark eyes locking with Kane's. She didn't smile, didn't flinch. The room quieted a fraction. "You got something to say?" Kane pressed, irritated by her composure. She said nothing. Her silence became its own dialogue, heavier than bullets. The young soldier at the edge, barely 20, still green, shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, maybe—" "Quiet, Private," Kane snapped. "You don't teach me etiquette." The room obeyed his authority, even in laughter. Maya slid a magazine into place. Metal clicked, clean and precise. A pause fell, the kind that prickled skin. The narrator's voice returned, low and resonant. They mocked the hands that once steadied rifles on desert ridges. They mocked the eyes that measured wind and distance before most of them learned to shave. But legends do not announce themselves, they wait, quiet as shadows. Kane chuckled, but there was an edge to it now. "Go on then, sweetheart. Show us what you got." Maya's fingers rested on the rifle stock, calm, patient. The firing lane swallowed her into its narrow silence, a corridor where jeers could not follow. Behind her, Kane's voice carried again. "Place your bets, boys. This'll be good." Maya inhaled slowly, her shoulders rising with the breath. She exhaled. Her heartbeat was steady. She raised the rifle, and without a word, she aimed. The shot from Maya's lane had not yet fired. The silence stretched long enough for General Kane to fill it. Look at that stance, he barked, voice booming. I've seen grandmothers in bingo halls hold cards with more confidence. Laughter burst from the group. Maya didn't move. She adjusted her grip. One of the soldiers whispered, General, maybe let her— Shut it, Kane snapped. We're having fun. Don't ruin it, he turned back to Maya. Tell me, sweetheart, you even know which end's the dangerous one? Or you just here for the Instagram photo? More laughter. A couple of the men mimed taking selfies, holding their pistols at odd angles. Maya's jaw tightened, but her face stayed calm. She slid a bullet into place. The narration threaded in, solemn, documentary-like. A woman whose hands once fed death into rifles on distant rooftops. Every movement here mirrored the old rituals of war, but the men mistook it for ignorance. The same blindness that cost lives overseas now played out in this fluorescent box. Kane leaned closer, smirk pulling at his lips. Tell you what, I'll spot you. First 5 misses don't count. You get a handicap, how's that? The men chuckled again. The young private on the side swallowed hard. General, with respect, Private, you don't know respect until you've earned a star. Pipe down. The boy went quiet, shame coloring his cheeks. Maya's eyes flicked toward him briefly, just enough to register his discomfort, before returning to her rifle. Kane crossed his arms. This is America's range, lady. Men who bled for this country come here. You don't belong. The words cut sharper than the laughter. Maya lowered the rifle a fraction. Her voice finally emerged, soft, deliberate. I bled. The room stilled for half a second. Kane scoffed, breaking the tension. Bled? What, paper cut? Burnt your hand on a stove? The crowd roared again. But that single phrase from her lips lingered in the air. The narrator's voice pressed in. Bled in silence, on missions denied by men like him. Bled for a flag that stitched her wounds with blame instead of honor. But she would not give them her story. Not yet. Maya raised her rifle again. Kane shook his head, grinning wide. Boys, she thinks she's a soldier. He clapped his hands together. All right then, let's make this interesting. He gestured to the far wall, to a target barely visible under the dim lights. See that? 100 yards. Bet she can't even hit the paper. The men leaned in, craning their necks. 100 says she misses, Kane barked. Any takers? They laughed, tossing bills onto the bench like poker chips. The private whispered under his breath, This ain't right. But no one listened. Maya stayed silent. Her eyes narrowed. She remembered another target, a rooftop in Kandahar. The dust storm howling, the voice in her earpiece trembling. They won't listen to you, Thompson. They said move anyway. The memory slammed into her chest. She had begged command not to push forward. They hadn't listened. The convoy rolled. The ambush came. Her finger had tightened on the trigger that day, cutting down threats one by one. But it hadn't been enough to save them all. The laughter at her back snapped her out of it. Ready, sweetheart? Kane taunted. Or you need me to hold it for you? The men laughed, but the private's eyes darted nervously between them and Maya. Maya set her cheek against the rifle stock. She inhaled, her voice calm. You should stop talking. The words silenced the laughter for a breath. Kane blinked, then smirked wider. Oh, she's got some fire. All right, prove me wrong, darling. Show us how tough you are. Maya did not answer. The narrator cut through, sharp. He mistook silence for submission. He mistook patience for weakness. The same mistake made by men buried in deserts far from home. They never lived to correct it. Kane motioned to the others. Eyes open, gentlemen. This'll be over quick. Maya adjusted her aim. She blocked out their noise, their smirks, their bets. In her mind, the sandstorm howled again, and the ridges of foreign hills lined up with the paper target. Her heartbeat slowed. Tick-tock, sweetheart, Kane mocked. We don't got all— The crack of the rifle cut him off. The room froze. The bullet punched dead center through the paper. The men stared. Maya lowered the rifle slightly. Not looking back, the narrator whispered, one shot. A shadow of the legend they had buried, and the silence after was louder than their laughter had ever been. Kane forced a laugh, too loud, too brittle. Lucky shot. Ain't nobody impressed by that. He leaned toward his men. Right? Pure luck. But their faces betrayed doubt. Maya stayed silent. She loaded another round. Kane clenched his jaw. For the first time, the general felt the faintest chill. The paper target still swayed faintly, the bullet hole drilled dead into its center. No one laughed now. General Kane's smirk twitched at the edges, but he refused to let it crack. "Well, gentlemen," he said, raising his voice, "seems the lady got lucky. Happens once in a blue moon." A few men chuckled half-heartedly. Their eyes betrayed the truth: disbelief, unease. Maya reloaded quietly. The slide clinked into place. "Tell you what," Kane continued, pressing the moment. "Let's make this fair. You want respect, sweetheart? Earn it." He gestured toward the farthest target station, almost hidden by shadows. 300 yards. Bet you can't even see it. One of the men laughed nervously. "Sir, that's near impossible indoors." "Impossible?" Kane barked. "The U.S. Army doesn't believe in impossible." His gaze drilled into Maya. "Unless you're scared." Maya finally turned her head, eyes locking with his. Her voice was even, low. "Scared of you?" The words hung sharp as broken glass. The private stifled a grin but quickly straightened when Kane glared. "Careful, sweetheart," Kane said, stepping closer. "Mouth like that gets people hurt. Lucky shot or not, don't mistake this for a game." Maya laid the rifle down on the bench. Her hands folded neatly on the stock, her reply was soft. "Funny, I was thinking the same thing." The room shifted. Small murmurs, men exchanging looks. The calmness in her tone unsettled them more than anger would have. Kane chuckled, forced and brittle. "All right, let's settle this. You take that shot. If you hit, maybe I'll buy you a coffee. If you miss, you admit you don't belong here. Deal?" Maya's lips curved just slightly. Not a smile, but something sharper. "I don't need your coffee." The private's eyes widened. The boldness in her voice seemed to cut through the stale air. Narration slid in like a blade, a duel of words. His arrogance against her patience. His laughter against her silence. Yet silence is not absence, it is the chamber before the shot. Kane slapped the bench, startling his men. "Gentlemen, you hear that? She thinks she's too good for my offer." He stepped close, leaning in. "Tell me, sweetheart, who taught you to shoot? Your boyfriend? YouTube?" Maya met his gaze head-on. "I taught myself to survive." The silence after was deafening. The private's breath caught. One of the older men coughed, shifting uncomfortably. Kane forced a grin, though his knuckles whitened. "Big talk. Let's see you back it up." Maya rose to her feet, taking her rifle. She moved without hurry, every step echoing against the concrete floor. The firing lane stretched out before her like a tunnel of judgment. Behind her, Kane spoke again, his voice mocking. "Gentlemen, place your bets. This'll be the shortest show of the week." Bills slapped against the counter. Laughter tried to return but faltered. The private leaned toward a corporal, whispering, "Look at her posture." "That's not civilian." "Shut up," the corporal hissed back. Maya positioned herself. 300 yards. Shadows swallowed the paper square. She inhaled. Exhaled. The world narrowed. The narrator whispered, "The desert rises again. Heat waves shimmer. She is alone, the last breath between her comrades and death. The wind speaks in calculations only her eyes can hear. Every bullet is a promise kept." Kane sneered, folding his arms. "Any day now, sweetheart." Maya's finger rested on the trigger. Her cheek pressed to the stock. Her breathing slowed until it matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. For a moment, the entire range fell into her silence. Kane's voice cut in again. Impatient. "Tick-tock, darling. We ain't got all day." The crack shattered the room. No one breathed. Far downrange, the target paper tore in its exact center. Maya lowered the rifle with mechanical grace. She turned, eyes sweeping the room once, landing on Kane. Her voice was steady. "Still think I don't belong?" The men didn't laugh this time. They shifted, uneasy, unsure which side to stand on. Kane's smile faltered for the first time. His voice was rough. Anybody can get lucky twice. But his words carried no conviction. The private muttered under his breath, almost reverent, "That's no civilian shot." Narration closed in, solemn, heavy. He wanted a spectacle. She gave him a reckoning. The trigger pulled more than a bullet. It pulled back the veil. And in that silence, even arrogance began to fear. The paper target hung lifeless. Its center punched out so cleanly it might have been printed that way. For several seconds, no one spoke. The fluorescent hum of the lights was the only sound. Then Kane clapped his hands together too loudly, forcing laughter. Well, well. Beginner's luck twice. Guess miracles do happen. No one laughed with him. One of the corporals cleared his throat, muttering, "That wasn't luck." Kane shot him a glare sharp enough to silence. Maya said nothing. She reloaded, the metallic click echoing. The narrator's voice slipped in, a silence filled with more weight than bullets. One woman against a chorus of doubt, proving herself not with words but with steel precision. Kane smirked, though his jaw was tight. "Do it again." Maya didn't answer. She simply lifted the rifle steady as stone and fired. The target jumped. Another perfect center hit. Gasps spread through the room. "Holy hell," the private whispered. "Bullseye. Again?" one of the men muttered. Maya reloaded without hesitation. The rifle cracked once more. The target tore dead center. The room shifted. Murmurs rippled. "She's military," someone whispered. "No civilian can shoot like that." "Who is she?" Kane barked. "Shut up! All of you!" His voice cracked under the strain. Maya lowered the rifle. Finally she spoke. "You done doubting yet?" The words were quiet, but they sliced through the tension. Kane's face flushed red. He laughed again, hollow. "3 lucky shots. Anybody can hit a bullseye once, maybe twice, but 3? Huh, just statistics." The private shook his head, almost in awe. "No, sir, that's trained." Kane turned on him. "What did you say, Private?" The boy hesitated, then straightened. "Sir, with respect." "I've seen marksmen miss at that distance." She hasn't. The men around him nodded slightly, though fear kept them quiet. Kane's voice rose. "You think you know better than me? You think she's some kind of hero?" Maya set the rifle down, her gaze steady on him. "I don't need to be your hero." The narration cut in, solemn. She wasn't here to inspire them. She wasn't here to prove herself to a system that discarded her. Every shot was not for their approval, but for her own quiet justice. Kane sneered. "All right, then. Let's raise the stakes," he motioned to the range officer. "Set up moving targets. I want to see this magic trick when the bullseye's not standing still." The officer hesitated, glancing at Maya. Then reluctantly, he activated the system. Paper silhouettes began sliding left to right across the lanes. Kane folded his arms. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Show us what you've got." Maya didn't flinch. She loaded calmly, took her stance, and fired. 1 shot. The moving silhouette jerked, perfect center mass. The crowd gasped again. 2nd shot. Another target dropped. 3rd shot. Clean headshot. Within seconds, 3 moving silhouettes hung torn in their centers. The silence was heavier than before. The private whispered, almost reverently, "That's not just trained. That's legendary." Kane's mask cracked. His laughter was gone now, replaced with something darker, unease. He barked at the crowd, "Don't you see? This is staged." "She's probably rigged it." "No way, no damn way." But his voice betrayed him. Maya finally spoke, her tone cutting. "I don't need tricks. You just underestimated the wrong person." Her words carried across the range, sharp as her shots. The narrator's voice pressed in. The arrogance of men who thought mockery could erase skill. The blindness of power that thought it could silence truth. Every bullet tore not just paper, but centuries of assumption. Kane stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Who the hell are you?" Maya's gaze met his. Her silence was the only answer. For the first time, General Richard Kane felt the walls closing in. Not from gunfire, but from a truth he could no longer laugh away. The range still smelled of burnt powder. Targets hung in tatters, ripped clean through by shots no one in the room could explain. Kane's laugh had died. His voice, when it returned, carried less mockery and more demand. "All right," he said, stepping forward, boots striking the concrete hard. "Enough games. Who trained you?" Maya reloaded calmly, not looking at him. Kane's tone sharpened. "Answer me." She set her rifle on the bench, finally lifting her gaze. "Does it matter?" The crowd shifted. Her words unsettled them. The private muttered, "Sir, maybe she just—" "Quiet," Kane snapped, silencing him. His eyes drilled into Maya. "Civilians don't shoot like that." "You military?" Maya tilted her head slightly, voice flat. "Not anymore." The words hit harder than a gunshot. The men stirred. "Not anymore?" "So she was?" Kane's expression twitched. He forced a grin. "What, a weekend warrior? National Guard?" Maya's lips curved just barely. "Something like that." Narration cut in, low and heavy. Every answer was smoke, every silence a shadow. She gave them fragments, but never the whole, because the whole was buried under lies signed by men like him. Kane leaned closer, his voice dropping. Where'd you serve? Maya didn't blink. Farther than you'd like to remember. The private's eyes widened. He whispered to a corporal, That's no bluff. Kane's fist slammed the bench. You don't get to be cryptic with me, lady. I asked you a direct question. Maya's reply was calm, precise, and I chose not to answer. The crowd gasped softly. For the first time, Kane looked rattled. His authority, so absolute minutes ago, seemed to fray. He snapped at the younger men. You're all impressed by a few bullseyes? You think that means anything? Anyone with enough time could pull that off. But the whispers among the group betrayed him. No one I know shoots like that. Not even the instructors. She's hiding something. The private straightened suddenly, voice firmer now. Sir, with respect, you're crossing a line. Kane's head whipped toward him. Excuse me? You're humiliating her. That's not leadership. That's... Kane grabbed his shoulder, shoving him back. Don't you dare lecture me on leadership, Private. You've barely worn the uniform. The boy stumbled, face burning with shame. Maya's voice cut in, sharper now. You should stop taking your failures out on him. The room froze. Kane's face went red. What did you just say? Maya stepped closer, eyes level with his. You heard me. Narration sliced through the silence. For years she held her tongue, bound by loyalty to men who betrayed her. But even shadows have limits. And now her words were bullets, quiet but impossible to ignore. Kane sneered, though the edge in his voice betrayed fear. You think you can come into my range, insult me, and walk away? Maya leaned in just slightly. This was never your range. You just act like it is. The men muttered under their breath, shock rippling through them. The private whispered, almost in awe. She's not afraid of him. Kane's fist clenched, his authority slipping like sand through fingers. Who the hell are you? He growled again, his voice no longer mocking, only desperate. Maya's silence answered louder than words. The range was no longer filled with laughter. Only the smell of cordite lingered, sharp and bitter, as silence weighed heavy on every man present. General Kane stood stiff, his jaw grinding, his voice rough. You're not just some hobby shooter. Nobody hits like that. So I'll ask again, who the hell trained you? Maya's eyes didn't waver. Experience, Kane barked a bitter laugh. Don't play games with me. Civilians don't talk like that. She lowered her rifle, resting it against the bench. Neither do survivors. The words dropped like lead. The private's head jerked up. Survivors? Maya's gaze flickered away for a moment. And then, just for a second, the room dissolved. The desert heat shimmered. Her uniform clung with sweat. She lay prone on a rooftop, scope trained on a dusty road where a convoy crawled forward. Her radio crackled. Sniper 1, hold position. We're moving. Her voice was urgent, desperate. Negative. Roads compromised. Insurgents waiting. Do not advance. Static. Then a cold reply. Orders stand. Move out. She had begged, cursed, pleaded. But the trucks rolled, the ambush erupted. Gunfire swallowed the desert. Explosions painted the sand red. She picked targets clean and fast, dropping enemy after enemy. But the betrayal had already cost lives. The flashback snapped away. Maya stood in the fluorescent-lit range once more. Kane's eyes narrowed. He studied her face, his smirk faltering. What unit were you with? Maya's voice was calm. The kind you pretend doesn't exist. The whispers among the men thickened. Black Ops? Special missions? She's not supposed to talk about it. Kane stepped closer, lowering his voice, venom curling around every word. What's your name? Maya tilted her head. Why don't you guess? He froze, his lips parting just slightly. Narration pressed in. Recognition claws at memory. He remembers whispers in dusty briefings. Stories of a ghost with a rifle. A myth soldiers passed like a warning. A name no one said too loudly because legends live in silence. The private spoke softly, reverently. Wait, no, it can't be. Kane's face twisted. Thompson. His voice cracked on the name. Maya Thompson? The murmurs spread like wildfire. You mean Phantom Sniper? She's real? Kane's fists clenched, but his voice was shaking now. You were discharged. I read the reports. You were scapegoated, Maya interrupted, her voice sharp, controlled. Your reports blamed me. Convenient, wasn't it? The room went still. Kane forced a sneer, though sweat glistened at his temple. You think anyone believes you? You were a ghost story, a myth to scare rookies. Maya leaned in just slightly, her voice cutting low. And yet here I am. Narration cut like a knife. The men who mocked her minutes ago now watched a revelation. The woman they laughed at had once carried them from the shadows of death. And the man who mocked her most had been part of burying her name. The private whispered, Sir. She covered missions we studied in training. I remember the stories. 1 shot, 2 kills. That was her. Kane snapped at him, voice cracking. Shut your mouth, Private. Those were lies, all of it. But his words lacked conviction. The younger soldiers looked between Maya and Kane, doubt settling like dust. Maya finally straightened. Her voice was steady, final. You can smear a name in ink. You can bury a soldier in silence, but truth has a way of crawling back. Kane's mask broke. For the first time, fear flickered in the eyes of the general. The shooting range was heavy with silence. Every man's breath felt too loud, every shuffle of boots like thunder. General Kane's jaw flexed, but his voice wavered. Enough, I don't care what stories you whisper. She's a fraud. A washed-up wannabe. Maya didn't blink. Tell them the truth. Kane's laugh was harsh, brittle. What truth? That you cracked under pressure? That you endangered lives? That's why you were erased, Thompson? Her eyes narrowed. No, I was erased because I refused to sign your lies. The words ricocheted like gunfire. The private's mouth dropped open. Sir, is that true? Kane snapped around, his face flushed. Stand down, soldier. Narration pressed in. This was more than a clash of egos. It was a battlefield of memory, where truth wrestled with fabrication. And for the first time, the general's armor showed cracks. Maya's voice sharpened, steady like a sniper's breath. I warned command about the ambush. I gave coordinates. I begged them to listen. You ignored it, because recognition meant admitting a black woman saved your men. The young soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Kane growled, stepping closer, spittle at the corner of his mouth. You don't know your place. You never did. That's why they cut you loose. You were insubordinate, a liability. Maya tilted her head slightly. I was a threat. Not to the mission. To your narrative, his fists balled. You don't speak to me like that. The private stepped forward cautiously. With respect, sir. She hasn't missed a single shot. Everything she said lines up with what we've read in after-action reports. Maybe. Silence! Kane roared. His voice cracked with desperation, but the silence afterward was damning. Maya's tone softened, almost pitying. You built a career on burying me, on stripping medals from my name. Every ribbon you wear, General, was stitched with someone else's blood. Gasps rippled. Kane's hands shook, but he forced a sneer. You think anyone will believe you? I outrank you. I always will. Men like me write history. Women like you are forgotten. Maya stepped into his space, her eyes burning into his. History isn't written by men like you. It's exposed by survivors like me. The tension in the room turned electric. Narration murmured. Power was shifting. Authority no longer clung to Kane's uniform. It lingered in Maya's words, in the eyes of the soldiers watching a man unravel before their very faces. The private whispered, almost to himself. She's the Phantom. She really is, Kane spun, pointing a trembling finger. You don't speak unless I command you. I made this unit what it is. I built respect through fear. You think a ghost story will undo me? Maya's voice struck cold. Not a ghost story, proof. And men who finally see what you are. His face blazed scarlet. He lunged a step forward, his voice dropping to a hiss. If you say one more word, You'll what? Maya interrupted sharply, slicing his threat in half. Bury me again? You already tried, and I'm still standing. The words landed heavy. Kane's mouth opened, then closed like a drowning man gasping for air. The private looked around at the others, then raised his voice, tentative but clear. Sir, if she's telling the truth, then you— Enough! Kane bellowed, veins bulging at his temple. But the more he shouted, the smaller he seemed. The younger soldiers saw through him now, their silence loud, their doubt louder. Maya's voice lowered, calm and cutting. This is your last command, General, and no one is following you. Narration pressed like a verdict. A man who thrived on obedience now stood stripped of it. Authority is not a rank, not a badge, not a shout. It is belief. And belief was gone. Kane's chest heaved. His voice cracked, pitiful, desperate. You don't know what this will cost you. You'll regret crossing me. Maya looked at him, steady as a trigger pull. I've already paid the price. It's you who owes the debt. The range was silent again, but the silence had changed. It was no longer Kane's silence of command. It was Maya's silence of truth. The next day, the range wasn't the same. Word had traveled fast. Too fast for Kane to contain. Soldiers whispered in the mess hall in barracks on the walk to drills. Did you hear? She's real. Phantom sniper. They said she hit every target without missing. The legend had been reborn, not by rumor, but by witness. General Kane stormed into the operations office, slamming his hand against the desk. I want names. Every damn soldier who's been talking. The captain flinched. Sir, with respect, it's everyone. You can't stop this. Kane's glare cut like a blade. I built this unit on discipline, on order, and now some ghost story is unraveling it. The captain hesitated. Sir, maybe it isn't a story. Kane's fist crashed against the table. Don't you dare. Don't you dare lend her credibility. She's a liar, a stain. I buried her for a reason. Narration pressed in. But even in his rage, the general knew. Authority slips quickest not when challenged openly, but when whispers turn into belief. Outside, Maya walked across the training yard. Heads turned. Soldiers who once laughed now fell silent in respect. Some even straightened unconsciously, as if standing at attention. The private from the range approached cautiously. Ma'am? Maya turned, her expression softening just slightly. Don't call me ma'am. I'm not your superior. He swallowed. With respect, you earned it more than anyone here. She studied his face. He was young, too young to have seen the things she'd seen. His eyes carried both awe and confusion. Why are you helping me? Maya asked gently. His voice was steady. Because we were taught to honor the ones who came before us. And you, he hesitated, you didn't just come before. You paved the way. Maya looked away, emotions flickering beneath her calm mask. In the command office, Kane sat hunched over a file. Inside were reports, sealed and stamped classified photos, missions, coordinates, and one signature that tied it all together. Maya's. He muttered through clenched teeth. If this gets out, I'm finished. A knock at the door. The private stepped in nervously. Sir? Kane didn't look up. What? Permission to speak freely. Kane's head shot up, eyes narrowing. You dare? The private swallowed hard. What you did to her. Burying her record. It's wrong. Kane's face twisted in fury. You think you know war? You think you know what's right? I made choices to protect this institution. To keep it clean. No one cares about her sacrifices. They care about strength, about image. The private's voice rose. Then why am I prouder of her than I'll ever be of you? The words stunned the room into silence. Narration whispered. And with that, the first soldier broke rank, not with his feet, but with his voice. Defiance spreads fastest when truth is undeniable. Kane's voice cracked with rage. You're finished, Private. Consider yourself discharged. But the boy didn't flinch. He stood tall. If speaking the truth ends my career, then so be it. But your career is already over. He left the office without waiting for dismissal. That evening, Kane found himself walking the hallways of base command. Conversations hushed as he passed. Men looked away. No more crisp salutes. Only silence, heavy, suffocating silence. Narration cut in. Respect is a currency. Once spent, it cannot be bought back with fear. Kane's account was empty. In contrast, Maya sat quietly in the cafeteria sipping coffee. A few soldiers approached. Ma'am, was it true? The convoy in '09? You saved them? Did you really clear that rooftop in Helmand? Maya's lips pressed into a faint smile. Truth isn't in the stories. It's in the lives that made it back home. The room fell reverently quiet. For the first time, Maya wasn't mocked. She was listened to. Late into the night, Kane sat alone in his quarters, medals glittering dully under the lamplight. He stared at them one by one. These were mine, he whispered, but his voice faltered. Weren't they? He hurled a medal across the room. It clanged against the wall, echoing like a gunshot. Narration pierced. The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. And nothing falls faster than false glory. The next morning, orders came down from above. An inquiry had been opened. Someone had leaked files, sealed reports tied to Maya's missions. Kane's blood ran cold. Maya stood at the edge of the parade ground, the sun warming her face. The private approached with a grin he couldn't hide. "Ma'am, word is, command's investigating." Maya tilted her head, eyes narrowing with quiet satisfaction. "Poetic justice doesn't need a trigger. Just time." The inquiry room was sterile. White walls, one long table, 3 officers seated across from Maya. They flipped open a folder thick with redacted lines and classified stamps. "Ms. Thompson," one officer began, his voice formal. "You're aware these documents contradict the official reports signed by General Kane?" Maya met his gaze. Contradict or expose? The officer shifted in his seat. "If your claims are true, then Kane falsified mission reports, claimed credit for actions you carried out, and intentionally concealed intelligence failures." "Not claims," Maya corrected calmly. "Facts." Elsewhere, Kane sat in a separate room. His voice cracked under the weight of his own rage. "This is a witch hunt. I served this country with honor. I bled for it." The investigator across from him raised a brow. "Yet your name appears on commendations tied to operations Thompson led." "Operations you said never happened?" Kane slammed his fist down. "She's manipulating you. You're letting some washed-up sniper poison this place with lies." The investigator didn't flinch. "And yet, every soldier we've spoken to describes the same events. Events you denied." Kane's face paled, narration cut sharp. The walls he built of denial and intimidation were closing in. Lies rot fastest when sunlight touches them. Back in Maya's room, the second officer leaned forward. "Why speak now, after all these years?" Maya's voice softened. "Because silence lets men like him rise, and silence cost my brothers and sisters their lives. I won't carry his sins any longer." The room fell quiet. Her words hung heavy, not just as testimony but as indictment. At base, whispers turned louder. Soldiers spoke openly now. He pinned failures on her, made her the scapegoat. All for promotions. The respect Kane once commanded bled away, replaced by suspicion, contempt, even disgust. That night, Kane stormed into the barracks. His face was flushed, his eyes wild. "You think you know the truth?" he barked. "You think she's some hero? She's nothing." No one moved. The private from the range stood slowly. "With respect, sir, she's everything you pretended to be." Kane's nostrils flared. "You dare speak to me that way?" The private didn't waver. "Yes, sir. Because you don't deserve the uniform you wear." A ripple of agreement moved through the room. Silent, powerful. Kane's chest rose and fell in quick, furious bursts. For the first time he saw it clearly. He had lost them. The inquiry stretched on. An officer held up a declassified photo. Maya prone on a rooftop. Rifle in hand, eyes steady even through grainy pixels. "This was buried," the officer said, sliding the photo across to her. "Do you confirm this is you?" Maya studied it, then nodded once. "That's me. That was the day Kane ignored my warnings." The officer pressed. "Why didn't you fight back then?" Her jaw tightened. "Because they silenced me with threats. Stripped my name. Took my uniform. Told me if I spoke, no one would believe me. And now?" Her eyes glistened, but her voice was steel. "Now they will." Narration cut in. It is not enough for truth to exist. It must be heard. And in that room, for the first time, Maya's truth echoed louder than Kane's rank. Meanwhile, Kane unraveled further. He sat slouched in his quarters, metal scattered around him like broken glass. He picked one up, gripping it tight. "I earned you," he whispered, voice cracking. "Didn't I?" He hurled it against the wall. "You are mine!" Silence answered him. 2 weeks later, the results were announced. General Kane was suspended pending court-martial. The base erupted with murmurs. Soldiers clustered in corners, shaking their heads, voices hushed but sharp. About damn time. Justice. He doesn't scare anyone anymore. Maya walked across the parade ground. This time the silence wasn't mocking. It was reverent. The private approached, eyes bright. "They're saying you'll be reinstated. That your record will be restored." Maya smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in her gaze. "Records don't bring back the fallen. But maybe Maybe it'll keep their memory alive. The private nodded firmly. And maybe it'll teach the next generation the truth. That night, Maya stood alone under the stars, rifle slung over her shoulder. Narration closed in. The wall had collapsed. Lies had crumbled, and in the ruins stood the woman they once mocked, no longer hidden in shadows. Not just a sniper, not just a survivor, a legend reborn. The courtroom was hushed. Rows of soldiers filled the benches, eyes fixed on the man at the front, General Kane. His uniform still bore stars on the shoulders, but they hung heavy now, stripped of meaning. The medals on his chest glinted under the fluorescent lights, but their shine was hollow. The judge's gavel struck. This court-martial is now in session. Maya sat at the witness stand, posture straight, eyes steady. For years her voice had been smothered. Now every syllable felt like liberation. The prosecutor rose. "Ms. Thompson, please recount the convoy ambush of 2009. Her voice was calm, measured. "I radioed warnings. Clear coordinates. I was ignored. The ambush cost lives." She turned her eyes briefly toward Kane. "And he buried that failure by burying me." Gasps rippled quietly through the room. The prosecutor placed a classified file on the table. These records, unsealed, confirm her account. General Kane signed falsified reports attributing her actions to himself while blaming her for disobedience. All eyes turned to Kane. His jaw clenched, but his voice cracked. I made decisions under pressure." "You don't understand," Maya cut in, her voice sharp. "No, you made decisions to protect yourself. And men died because of it." Narration pressed in. The courtroom was not a battlefield of bullets, but of truths. And truths, once fired, cannot be recalled. One by one, soldiers testified. The private from the range stood tall. "She saved lives. We mocked her because he taught us to. But she's everything he pretended to be." Another soldier spoke. "The phantom sniper. We thought it was legend. It wasn't, it was her. And he made sure we never knew." Kane's face twisted. He slammed a fist against the table. "They're lying. All of them. She's manipulating you." The judge's gavel struck. "General Kane, enough." For the first time in his career, his voice carried no authority. Only desperation. Maya's final words on the stand cut deepest. "You can bury a soldier's name. You can erase their medals. But you cannot erase the lives saved, or the truth carried by those who remember. That is my record. That is my justice." The silence afterward was absolute. The verdict came swiftly. "General Kane, this court finds you guilty of falsifying military records, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming." Gasps filled the room. "You are hereby stripped of rank and dishonorably discharged." The gavel fell like thunder. Narration struck. A man who rose on the backs of others had finally fallen beneath the weight of his own deceit. The chains of his false authority lay broken at his feet. Outside, the sky was golden with late afternoon sun. Soldiers gathered around Maya, no longer with ridicule but respect. The private approached, a small box in his hands. "Ma'am, they wanted you to have this." Inside lay a medal, long denied, long hidden. Her name etched cleanly on the plaque. Staff Sergeant Maya Thompson, valor beyond measure. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched it. "I don't need medals," she whispered. "But the names of the fallen deserve this truth." The private smiled softly. "And so do you." Later, Kane walked alone through the base gate, stripped of stars, stripped of command. No salutes, no farewell, only silence. Narration pressed in. Power abandoned him like a tide retreating from shore. And in its place remained the void he'd tried to fill with stolen glory. He muttered to himself, voice hollow. "They'll forget her again. They always do." But the whispers carried through the base, spreading like fire. "They'll never forget." That evening, Maya stood at the edge of the range once more, rifle in hand, the setting sun painting the sky in crimson and gold. The private joined her quietly. "Do you ever regret coming back here?" Maya's gaze lingered on the horizon. "Regret? No, pain always. But pain is proof we survived." She raised the rifle steady as ever. One final shot rang out, splitting the silence. The bullet found the bullseye dead center. She lowered the weapon, exhaling slowly. Narration closed like a final stanza. Chains broken. Truth restored. The woman they mocked now stood untouchable, not a ghost, not a myth, but a legend etched into memory. And legends do not die.